The amount of research that you put into this show, The Men Behind the Music, is mind-boggling. And we've talked about that in previous sessions before. But when it comes to the amount of books that you must have dived into in order to make this, like, you've got books everywhere. You've got a book right here. Like, what's this book about? Just as an example, because it's sitting right there.
I love this book. I love this book. It's a relatively new book. It's called All You Need Is Ears, a very interesting title, written by George Martin himself. This is such an interesting book. It's written later on in his life after he really gets a chance to think about his career.
Right.
Quite a career to think about. I mean, there are a few special things going on with George Martin. He did so much to define the Beatles sound. And coming from this completely unlikely place, I mean, he was classically trained, and I hesitate to use the word trained. He was exposed to a lot of classical music when he was young, grew up in the Great Depression, very poor, and he had no exposure to jazz or rock or anything like that.
Right.
So when he worked with non-classical musicians for the first time, I think it was a bass player and somebody else he got in the studio, and he just kind of stared at them because he had no idea what jazz music was supposed to sound like.
So at that point, no exposure to it at all?
Nothing. And he actually kind of insulted them, and he said something about, why does it sound like you're playing with boxing gloves on your head? Like, he didn't get it at all. And this is the guy that ended up defining the sound of the Beatles.
And future producers to come after that.
Absolutely. He pretty much created the role of the record producer. He ended up playing the instrumental parts on so many tracks because he could play all these instruments. And I mean, John and Paul weren't great at the piano for the longest time, and there were just things that he could do that the others couldn't.